middle of the laws of Yom Tov. We're just going to make mention tonight. Tomorrow, of course, is Tu B'Shvat. So it also has some halachas, some that are more relevant today, some that are less relevant. But we'll try and say so. Essentially, we're going to call it the Rosh Hashanah, the new year for trees. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? So it's relevant to several agricultural laws that we have in the Torah. So the first one, for an example, is the mitzvah of orla. Now, orla means we're not allowed to eat the fruit of a tree the first 3 years of the tree's existence. Now, not every tree is going to give fruit within the first 3 years, so you get lucky. You can have the first year of the fruit, but many trees, sometimes in the first, the second, the third, they have some fruit. We can't eat the fruit within the first 3 years, and this applies both in the land of Israel and outside the land of Israel. This mitzvah, although we can't have any benefit, not only we can't eat it, we can't have benefits. We can't sell it either. We can't have any benefit from the fruit the first 3 years. So what's the definition of a year? You don't have to start keeping a calendar of exactly when every tree was planted. We have one birthday, so to speak, for all the trees in the world, and that's tonight, tomorrow, the 15th day of the Jewish month of Shvat. So Tu B'Shvat, the two is Tes Vav, is the numerical value of 15. So the 15th day of Shvat. And regardless of how early in the past year you planted the tree, comes this day, it becomes 1 day old. Now, when I say regardless of how early, if you planted the day before, that may not help much. It has to take root. So let's just say, different plants and different trees might have different lengths of time. Let's just say, for example, 6 weeks. I planted the sapling 6 weeks ago, and even though it's only been in the ground 6 weeks, it's 1 year old. Right? Well, I could have planted another one on Tu B'Shvat itself, and it'll take, therefore, entire 12 months, or if there's a Jewish leap year, 13 months to become 1 year old. So any time from in that year, the next Tu B'Shvat becomes 1 year old. So speaking of planting saplings, so for this law, sometimes you buy a tree from a nursery. It's not a little seed you can plant, and it might be a few years old already. So what happens when you plant it? You take it out of, it comes in a pot or that black plastic, type thing, and it's got some soil. So what happens? So it depends how you plant it. So if you plant it with enough soil that it can still survive, then we don't start the 3 years again. If it doesn't have enough soil with it to survive, then we do start the 3 years again. So leaving this law aside, let's just talk about what's good for the plant. What they normally advise you is that you shake off all the earth into the hole, and you sort of open up the roots, because they've been forced to just go around in circles because they've been squashed in this little bag or pot, and you open it all up, and you put a lot of sort of loose soil in the hole, and you put it in there. Now, if you do that, that's going to cause you to start the 3 years all over again, because when it actually went into the ground, it was removed from the soil, at least from enough soil. There's always still some soil stuck to the roots, but enough soil to live. And so it's like goes into the earth. It starts a process all over again. If you would take that soil that's living in as is, which evidently is enough because the tree's alive, and you put that in without opening it all up, then you don't need to count again. Now, it might take another year for the trees to really get its roots going, but it means you get your fruit 3 years earlier. So, 2 years, depends how old the tree is. So it may be in your best interests to do that. So that's just practically, if you're planting a tree from the nursery, to try and do that. Another law that applies to the law of Niter Avoy. Now, most people haven't heard of this because it only applies in the land of Israel. It's not something that applies outside of Israel. And this is the 4th year, right? So the first 3 years, regardless of where you are in the world, both in Israel, and outside of Israel, we can't have benefit from the fruit. In Israel, fruit that grows in the 4th year, in the ideal world, should be taken to Jerusalem and eaten there. Okay, today we have a problem, with tome and different things. So the exact procedure, they don't really, so they sort of leave it. But in concept, so that also this Tu B'Shvat is the day work out the 4th year as well. Another halacha that applies to is trumas and maisrus, the various tithes that we have to take for give to the kohen, give to the Levi, and various things from our produce. So let's say, for an example, let's say we had 10 apples. So you don't have to take a piece from each apple to use as your tithes. You could take 1 apple or half an apple or something on behalf of all 10, whatever the percentage that you need to take. And it doesn't have to necessarily be apples from the same, they harvested together on the same day and different things. But whatever you take as tithe has to be the same year, has to be the same crop, the same season, the same year as what you're tithing for. So let's use an example of what works. So let's say we have several bunches of grapes that we harvested from our grapevine in the backyard, and we're tithing it because, again, this only applies in the land of Israel to tithe it. And they're all from the same year, from one Tu B'Shvat to the next Tu B'Shvat. So I take half a bunch or whatever it is, and I put that aside as the tithes and as the truma, the maisa, and that works for the rest of the fruit. I can now eat it. If I pick some today, which is before Tu B'Shvat, and I pick some more tomorrow, then I can't use today's to take tithes what I pick tomorrow because they belong to a different year. I can't, whenever we take some of it as a tithe, it has to be everything, both what you take and what you're taking for had to belong to the same year. So again, so Tu B'Shvat is the cutoff for that. Okay, so that's just on the simple level, what it's a Rosh Hashanah for. But we get rather excited about it, right? We get rather excited about it. There's for example, there's a Rosh Hashanah for the tithes of animals, right? So we don't normally celebrate that. I mean, it has its applications in the land of Israel. But over here, no one's really getting excited about it. We don't sit down and eat different types of meat or or various things. But the Rosh Hashanah of trees, we do get excited about, right? And the main reason for this is that our sages teach us, and it's a verse actually. We've got 2 verses, but our sages expound on it. The Adam Eitz HaSadeh, a person is compared to the tree of the field, right? We are somehow connected, and there's a lot of lessons for us in this, a lot of lessons, and I'll just mention 1 or 2, just get the point, but we'll end up going through more of them of today and tomorrow, God willing. But let's say, for example, for a tree to survive strong winds and various things, it needs to have a strong root system, a strong and deep root system. So if we develop within ourselves and our children a strong root system, our emunah and betochen, our spiritual connection to Hashem, then that's going to help us prevail against the strong winds of various ideas and thoughts and trends that come in the world. So there's lots of lessons. Before we get to the lessons, we'll talk about some of the customs and things that we do. So we have a custom to eat lots of fruit. That's number one. Some people have 15 types of fruit because it's the 15th of the month. Some people go for 26 because it's the numerical value of Hashem's name. It's not really if you have a custom that your family eats a certain amount of fruit, so go for it. But the main thing is to eat different types of fruit. So we have various fruits that we have, and particularly the 7 species with which Israel is blessed. All right, so of besides the 2 grains, the 5 fruits that we have, we've got the olives, the dates, grapes, figs, and pomegranates. So we try and have those 5 types of fruit. And if we have multiple types of fruit, then we say the blessing on one of the ones that comes from the land of Israel. Now, if we have multiple fruits that come from the land of Israel, we make a blessing in the order of the mentioned in the verse. So it's actually the order that I said it. It's the olive, dates, grapes, figs, pomegranate. So if you remember that, good. If not, it's not the end of the world. But we try and have that fruit. So if we're having the 7 species, then we're having a grain. Let's say you had like some type of cake or of the wheat. So we say the first blessing we say is the mazonos, on the baked goods. Then the next blessing is hagofen, on wine or grape juice, if we're having that for our grapes. Then ha'etz, the blessing on the fruits that grow on trees. Then if we're having other types of things that grow from the ground, we make the hadoma, the blessing for the fruit that grows from the ground. And then if we're having some of our 7 species, that's, for example, barley in the liquid version, have a ice cold beer, for an example. Then last will come shahako. Right? So it's also a way of consuming the produce. Not to go overboard with the beer, though, but but that's if there's such a thing. Just joking. But anyway, there's also custom to have carob, to have boxons, they call them in Yiddish, right? To have some carob on the day. And many people have a custom to eat some type of like esrog jelly. They get their hands on it. It's also the day, interestingly, in some of the Talmudic texts, when it refers to the day, it doesn't say Rosh Hashanah le'ilanois in plural, Rosh Hashanah of the trees. It says Rosh Hashanah le'ilon, of the tree. Now, although it means the trees, but the Kabbalists point out from the fact that it seems to write it in singular, there's a specific tree that has really been focused on this day. And they explain that is the esrog. So on Tu B'Shvat, it's decided what kind of esrog you're going to get. What kind of, you're going to have a nice one or a, barely kosher one or whatever it is. So Tu B'Shvat is a time where we should daven for a nice esrog. We want to be able to do the mitzvahs in the most best way and most beautiful way as possible. And esrog is, you can get one that's barely kosher, you can get one that's magnificent and everything in between, So we daven that we should merit to have a nice esrog. There are many Jewish communities that on Tu B'Shvat, the greeting, they greet each other is a good to esrog. You should have a good esrog. Right? That's your that's the greeting that they give. So that's that day. All right. So 26 lessons we can learn from Tu B'Shvat. Change the reading glasses. 26 lessons that we can learn from Tu B'Shvat. So number one, from the fact, not just Tu B'Shvat, from the fact that a person is compared to the tree of the field. So number one, trees were created for the benefit of others, right? They produce fruit for others to eat, to give shade. The leaves produce oxygen, supposed to be the breathe. So too, the wood is used for building, right? Everything about the tree is for the benefit of others. So too, a Jew is meant to help others, to have a focus on helping others. Yes, Robert.
Rabbi?
You're on mute, Robert.
Okay, do you have a reference document that we can have for review after the session?
Let me get that for tomorrow.
Okay, no, I'd appreciate it because it's a lot of information and I appreciate being able to use it as a reference.
Is that from the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi?
What I said until now, so not the lessons, that's compiled from other, but what I said from is, in various.
Yeah, but the 20 rules you're talking about.
Yeah, 26.
Yeah, these 26 are just compiled from I actually do have it in a Word document, so I could
oh, that'd be great.
I'll send it to Rabbi Smith and ask him to send it to everyone.
We're not going to complete all 26 today, so at least we can have, I would not think so, then we can then have it from, again, today through tomorrow would be great, very helpful for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I shall send it to him. I should have thought about it beforehand. Thank you.
That's why you have us here with you.
That's right.
You can just put it in the chat.
Yeah, you can put the link in the chat and we can print it off, those of us who have the capacity for that.
Let's see
not,
how it,
just do it, for tomorrow. Whatever's helpful for you. Hi.
Yeah, let's just see if I can.
Oh, no.
All right.
Okay.
Just seeing how I. All right. So I'll keep going as I'm trying to work out how to.
Just drag it over and drop it. That's all. The file icon, just drag it from wherever it is on your screen and drop it in the chat in the copies.
Yeah. So I got it in a Google Drive. That'll work.
Should.
My best to download it to the desktop. But what make a difference?
In the chat, we can just do it while we're talking with you.
Whichever way makes it easier.
I can see one thing. I need to be able to copy it first before the class.
Yeah. So let me just well, this okay. We'll keep going while I'm working on this and see if I can multitask on the desktop. So so Jew has to try and be there is created really to try and help others, and to be there for others, right? As it says, Olam Chesed Yaboneh, the world is built on Chesed, on kindness. Okay, so that's the first lesson that we have, and so I'm just going to try and drag it into the chat now. Let's see if everyone else works. Everyone. Doesn't move. All right, sorry, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Okay, all right, we're patient. It's all right.
And let's try it again. Let me do because it's currently in use. Okay. So did it come through in the chat?
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
Okay, it's in the chat. I want it sent. Well, again, this is currently in use, but I closed it. Okay, let's try it again. Okay,
Shaya.
everyone's got it. Okay.
Okay, yep.
Okay. So that's
Thank
we'll
you.
give people a chance to open it.
Thank you.
And
Bye-bye.
sorry about the delay.
Love you,
Okay. So as we said that so the first lesson we have is that because trees are created for the benefit of others, so that's how a person has to behave. So the next one is that trees produce a lot of fruit, and that fruit produces more fruit. So the lesson that we have is that a Jew's mitzvahs, that's our fruit. That's so the mitzvahs we produce, and the mitzvahs we have produce other mitzvahs. So it's a concept of mitzvah gereris mitzvah. One mitzvah brings another mitzvah, and just on a simple level. No, my kids are a bit older now, but when they're younger, they had this little picture book, and these little kids books. And what happens is that one person put something in a stocker box. So another person saw that and they said, you know what? I should really do something to someone else also. And they go and return something, and someone else saw them and they went and did something, and they saw someone else saw that person do it. So it sort of each mitzvah dragged another mitzvah. But it doesn't have to be like that. It can be on lots of levels. Really, the main idea of a one mitzvah bringing another mitzvah is that our spiritual side and our physical side, to a large extent, it's like a muscle, so to speak. The more you use a muscle, the stronger it gets, and the less one uses a muscle, the weaker it gets. So if someone exercises their spiritual side of themselves, then it becomes stronger, and it's we grow more, and it's easier to do the right thing. If someone exercises by using the animal side of themselves, then the opposite happens. So the more positive that we do, positivity breeds positivity, and we end up accomplishing more. Number 3, for those who are following along. So even though you can't notice, but trees are always growing. If you sit there watching a tree, you don't see the growth. If they come back after some time, you notice there's a difference. Have a friend that his job is to supervise the wheat for matzah. So we always tell him that we hope he enjoys watching the grass grow for 6 weeks at a time. Just sits on the farm every day. That's needs to make sure it doesn't rain before they harvest it. But anyway, you don't notice that the tree is growing, but it is growing slowly. And sometimes ourselves, sometimes we even get frustrated with ourselves. We think, why aren't I growing? But spiritually, but it's only sometimes when you look back, where was I a year ago or 2 years ago? And it's only by looking back you realize what you've actually accomplished. So We need to always be growing. 4. So trees start off as a small, insignificant seed, right? But they grow into huge, huge giant trees. You look at trees that are hundreds of years old. They're just so the same as ourselves. We start off. When we say insignificant, we don't, God forbid, mean no Jew is really insignificant. No human, no person is insignificant. If we didn't have a significance, Shem would not have brought us into this world. We wouldn't be born. But in respect to our spiritual accomplishments, we start off at, at ground zero. We start off at a relatively insignificant level, and then as we accomplish more, so eventually after a lifetime of accomplishment, then what we accomplished is just huge, particularly compared to where we started. Okay. So 5. So a tree starts from a single seed, yet over its lifetime, it can produce thousands, millions, seeds, whatever. This is just so too. A Jew essentially starts off barren. We're born without mitzvahs, but we can produce millions. Not the numbers, the competition, and often the quality is more important than the quantity of the mitzvahs. But we accomplish so much. 6. So trees need water to grow. Right? Without water, a tree can't survive. So similarly, a Jew needs to be connected to the Torah. The Torah is compared to water. The reason, by the way, that the Torah specifically compared to water, amongst other things, is that other things, when they travel, often become diluted or less powerful. If you take, let's say, for an example, the a ray of sunlight, by the further the sunlight travels from its source, the weaker it becomes, until eventually it's not perceptible anymore. You can't even notice it. But water, the same. If you look at a very high waterfall, it's the exact same drop of water that was on the top that flows down to the bottom. So even though it can move a great distance, it's the same drop of water. So the Torah that comes from this incredibly high source of being connected to God's essence and intellect and will and desire, and it comes down, becomes enclosed into physical objects in this world. But nevertheless, it's the same spiritual entity. So a Jew needs to be connected to Torah the same way a tree needs water, same way we need water is also. Okay, number 7. So during the winter, many trees, they lose all the leaves, and they look dead. They look lifeless. Of course, coming from Australia, that's not the case, right? It's all the native trees are evergreen. But many parts of the world, most parts of the world, perhaps, the trees look dead during the winter. And so, excuse me. And then when summer comes, all of a sudden, the leaves start to grow, and then the blossoms, and they become beautiful, and they thrive. So the same thing. Tu B'Shvat comes during the winter, right? It's a cold day, and it's showing us that even if we aren't thriving the way that we could be, but we have, there's going to come a summer. Mashiach comes. We're going to see what we've accomplished. Throughout the, there's the famous story. We're going to drop over time, but we'll quickly just finish the story. The famous Onkelos that he converted to Judaism, and his uncle was Emperor of Rome, and he wanted an opportunity to convert. So he asked his uncle for some business advice. He says, how do you make it? So he says you buy something that's undervalued, not appreciated, and you hold on to it till people appreciate it, and then you make a huge profit. And when eventually when converted to Judaism, his uncle said, "How can you do that?" And he says, "Well, you're the one who told me to." He says, "What do you mean?" He says, "You told me to find something underappreciated." And the world at the time, who appreciated Judaism? I'm going to hold on to it till Mashiach comes and we'll be able to see all the accomplishments we had. So that's the hope. That's one of the reasons that Tu B'Shvat is in the middle of winter. So we'll continue tomorrow, God willing. So we'll already be halfway through, or 2/3 through Tu B'Shvat when we learn again tomorrow. So we'll have a incredibly spiritual uplifting Tu B'Shvat, the first 2/3 of it, and enjoy and make sure to go out and get some fruit today.
Thank you,
you,
Rabbi.
Thanks, Rabbi. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.